My letter to Walter. Chapter 1. When I first saw you. Dear Walter, I'm writing you this letter not because I expect a reply, but because this is the only way I can set myself free. For 8 years, I've carried you with me in my thoughts, in my dreams, and in the spaces between moments when no one is watching. I loved you. I still do, in ways that words can never truly hold. But this is where I begin to let go. I first saw you at the campus library, fall of our freshman year. You were laughing God. That laugh leaning against a bookshelf with a novel in your hand. You wore a worn-out grey hoodie and your hair was an unruly mess. You didn't look like the kind of boy movies are made about. But in my world, you were everything. I sat 2 rows behind you for months, always pretending to study while stealing glances. Sometimes you'd hum under your breath, and I memorized those tunes like love songs written just for me. You didn't know I existed. Not really. Once, you dropped a pen, and I returned it to you. You smiled and said, "Thanks." And that was enough to keep my heart hopeful for weeks. I told myself it was just a phase. A crush. It wasn't. You dated others. I stayed silent. You cried when your mother got sick. I stood outside the chapel, praying for you like you were mine. You got your heart broken. I listened to every detail you shared with your friends and bled for you quietly. But through it all, you never saw me not the way I saw you. I don't blame you, Walter. Love isn't owed. But I need you to know that for 8 years, I loved you in a way that was soft and constant and invisible. I gave you every poem I never wrote, every smile I never showed, and every moment I could have spent on someone who might have loved me back. And now, I need to let myself be free of you. This is the first letter. There will be 12 more. Not because I want you to read them, but because I need to write them. Love. Isla. Chapter 2. The year I almost spoke. Dear Walter, it was the year. You took that literature class, the one you always complained about because of the early morning lectures. I switched my entire schedule just so I could be in the same room, hoping that maybe you'd sit beside me. You never did. You always chose the window seat. You liked to look outside, probably dreaming of somewhere better, freer. I used to wonder what kind of world lived behind your eyes. Was it the past you were escaping or a future you longed for? Either way, I wished I could be part of it. There were moments when I almost spoke to you. Once, I dropped my copy of Wuthering Heights too close to your feet just so you'd notice me. You looked up, handed it to me, and gave a small smile, the kind that doesn't quite reach the eyes. I rehearsed conversations in my head 1,000 times. "Hi, Walter. Do you want to grab a coffee?" You look like someone who understands broken characters. But the words never made it past my lips. I was terrified of ruining the fantasy of learning that your kindness was just politeness, that your smile was meant for everyone. I preferred to stay in the safety of my silent hope, where I could love you perfectly, without the fear of being rejected. Do you remember that open mic night on campus? You read a piece about how people leave. I was in the crowd. I remember every word. My fingers trembled, clutching my notebook filled with poems I had written about you. I wanted to get up there. I wanted to read something that would make you look at me, really look at me. But I didn't. Instead, I clapped until my hands burned, then walked home alone, in the rain, whispering your name like a prayer. You were always out of reach, Walter. Maybe that's why I loved you so deeply, because I never had the chance to lose you. But I also never had the chance to keep you love. Isla. Chapter 3. All the women you loved. Dear Walter, I remember every girl you ever loved. There was Claire, your first serious girlfriend. She had soft curls and a voice like sugar. She walked beside you like she belonged there. And maybe she did. You'd carry her bag, open doors for her, laugh like you had never known sadness. I used to sit behind you in the campus cafe and watch. You traced circles on the back of her hand while she spoke. I told myself she was lucky. Then I told myself she wasn't because I would have loved you better, gentler, truer. Then there was Maya, the artist. She was chaos and color and wild dreams. She left red lipstick prints on your cheek and paint on your jacket. You looked like someone who had finally found their muse. I once heard you say, "She makes me feel alive." And I wondered what I was doing wrong all those years loving you in silence, while she simply arrived and became your universe. And yet, I never hated them. How could I? When they were holding the heart I'd spent years aching for. I watched you fall in love. I watched you fall apart. I watched you try again. And through it all, I remained invisible. I told myself I was patient, loyal. But the truth is I was afraid. Afraid that if I ever said a word, you'd look at me the same way you looked at empty chairs after everyone had left. Sometimes I wonder if I had told you, would it have changed anything? Or would I have become just another story? You told your next love about a girl who cared too much. You once said in passing that timing is everything. Maybe my timing was always wrong. Or maybe you just never looked close enough to see me. Still, I loved you, even when you gave your heart away. Piece by piece, I stayed behind gathering the fragments you dropped without knowing love, Isla. Chapter 4. Becoming a ghost. Dear Walter, somewhere along the way, I stopped being a person in your world and started becoming a ghost in mine. I was there, always there, but never really seen. I faded into the background like a forgotten painting on a crowded wall. You walked past me so many times. Did you ever notice how I wore my hair differently on the days I knew you'd be around? How I started reading the authors you mentioned, just to have some invisible thread between us. I built a version of you in my mind, soft-spoken, thoughtful, romantic. Maybe you are all those things. But maybe I just created a better version of you because it was easier to love a fantasy than to face the truth, that the real you never chose me. 8 years is a long time to love someone in silence. It changes you. It teaches you how to smile while breaking inside. It teaches you to accept crumbs and call it a feast. It teaches you how to write letters you'll never send. There were days I hated you, Walter. Not because you were cruel, but because you weren't mine to begin with. You were kind and smart and gentle, and that made it worse. How do you stop loving someone who never hurt you, who never lied, who simply never looked your way? Do you know how painful it is to sit across from you during a group dinner, hearing you talk about your dreams, your childhood, your fear of thunderstorms, and pretending like I wasn't memorizing every word as if they were scripture? Do you know what it's like to look at you and think, I could make you so happy if you'd only let me? But you never let me, and I never asked you to. I became an expert at making myself small. So small, in fact, that I started to disappear even from myself. This letter, these letters, maybe they're not really for you at all. Maybe they're for the girl I used to be, the one who thought her quiet. Love would one day be enough. Love. Isla. Chapter 5. The night you fell in love. Dear Walter, I remember the night you fell in love truly, deeply, completely. It wasn't with me. It was a rainy Friday. We were all gathered at Olivia's rooftop party, and you arrived late, drenched, shaking water from your hair, like some boy straight out of a novel. I stood in the corner, clutching a paper cup, wondering if you'd notice. I wore that blue dress, the one I once overheard you say was your favorite color. You didn't. Instead, your eyes found Elena. She wasn't even trying. That was the worst part. She was just being herself, funny, loud, magnetic in the way stars are magnetic, pulling everything in their orbit. You laughed with her like you had never laughed before. And I knew in that moment that everything I had hoped for was never going to happen. I stepped out onto the fire escape that night and cried. Quietly, so no one would hear. So you wouldn't. You never came looking for me. You never noticed I was gone. That night, you chose her. You talked about her for months after. The way she danced barefoot. How she said your name like it belonged only to her. How she saw through your silence like it was made of glass. I watched it unfold, your joy, your fire, your heartbreak when she left. I saw the way you unraveled. How your smile lost its light. And I was there. Always there. The friend. The shadow. The girl who knew exactly what kind of tea you liked when your world got too heavy. You cried once on my shoulder. And God help me, I cherished that tear like it was a kiss. I should have told you then. But I didn't. Because even in your pain, you were still dreaming of someone else. And I was still dreaming of you. I think that night broke something in me. Not because you loved someone else, but because I finally understood that no matter how long I waited, you were never going to turn around and find me there. Still, I loved you. Even as it shattered me, love, Isla. Chapter 6. The life I didn't live. Dear Walter, I've spent so long orbiting around you that I forgot I had a world of my own. There were other boys who looked at me the way I wished you would. One in particular, Daniel, was kind. He remembered the way I liked my coffee and once left flowers on my doorstep after a tough week. He listened when I spoke. He made me laugh. But I couldn't love him. I told myself it was timing, that I needed to heal from my own heartbreak. But the truth is I was waiting for you. Even then, I was holding out hope that someday you'd look at me and feel everything I buried for years. So I kept Daniel at a distance. And eventually, he stopped trying. He said I looked at him like I was searching for someone else inside his face. He wasn't wrong. I missed birthdays. Said no to vacations. Postponed dreams. I kept my world small because I thought if I stayed close enough to you, maybe you'd finally see me. But you didn't. You lived your life. And I paused mine. I put my happiness on layaway, always thinking the universe owed me something for loving you so quietly and so long. I was wrong. Love is not a transaction. It's not a reward. It doesn't work on timelines or promises never spoken. I thought if I waited long enough, you'd wake up one day and see that I had always been the one. But you never did. And I'm starting to wonder if I spent more time loving you than I did loving myself. This isn't your fault. You never asked me to wait. You never promised anything. But I can't help but grieve the years I spent standing still. The chapters of my life left blank while I kept rereading the story of you. So many maybes never became more. So many almosts never became us. And maybe that's the real heartbreak. Love. Isla. Chapter 7. If I had told you, dear Walter, sometimes I lie awake at night and rewrite the past. I picture the moment I finally said it, the words spilling from my lips like a confession I'd held on to for far too long. Walter, I love you. What would you have done? Would you have smiled, surprised but warm? Or would you have looked away, gently, kindly, and said, I'm sorry? Would it have changed anything? Or would it have ruined everything? I used to think I was brave for loving you in silence, that my quiet loyalty meant something noble. But now I wonder if I was just afraid. Afraid of hearing the truth. Afraid of shattering the image I had of you, the image I had of us. Even though we never existed. I gave you years, Walter. 8 long years of waiting, aching, hoping. And I never asked for anything in return. Not your love. Not your time. Not even your friendship, really. But maybe I should have. Maybe I should have fought for my own heart instead of hiding it. Behind every almost conversation, every half-written message, every late night. What if? Because the truth is, you didn't break my heart. I broke it myself every day I chose to love you silently, instead of letting go. There's a strange kind of grief in loving someone who never asked to be loved. It feels like mourning a future that never happened. If I had told you back then, maybe things would have hurt more in the beginning. Maybe you would have turned me down gently, and I would have cried for weeks. But maybe then I would have had the chance to heal. Instead, I kept choosing pain in small, quiet doses. The kind that lingers. The kind that becomes part of you. I think the saddest part is that you'll never know how deeply you were loved. Love, Isla. Chapter 8. The moments that kept me. Dear Walter, it wasn't always pain. That's what made it harder to let go. There were moments, small, fleeting, ordinary things that made my heart whisper, maybe. Like that afternoon we walked back from the bookstore together. You offered to carry my bag. We talked about our favorite childhood books. And you laughed when I said I used to pretend I was Anne, surely waiting for a Gilbert Blythe of my own. You looked at me for a second, just a second, and said, "You kind of remind me of her." You don't know what that did to me. Or the time we sat beside each other at Ava's bonfire, shoulders barely touching, and you handed me your jacket when the wind got too sharp. I wanted to believe it meant something. Maybe it did. But it wasn't love. It was kindness. Kindness that kept me hoping. Kindness that made me believe you saw me not all the way. Not fully, but enough to keep me coming back. You always made time to ask how I was. Even if just in passing. You always smiled when I entered a room. You always said, "Take care," like it mattered. And those little crumbs felt like a feast when I was starving for something more. I clung to them, wove them into stories in my mind. I made meaning out of scraps, because I loved you. And when you love someone, even the smallest gestures feel like signs. But they weren't signs. They were just you. Being you. And me? I was a girl who mistook attention for affection, presence for promise. Still, those moments saved me, even as they broke me. They made me feel alive. They reminded me that my heart could still hope. But now, I see them for what they were, memories I dressed in dreams. And that's okay, because even if they weren't real the way I wanted them to be, they were mine. Love, Isla. Chapter 9. The Breaking Point. Dear Walter, I reached my breaking point the day I realized I was loving a memory more than a man. It happened on a spring morning, one of those days when the world smells like possibility and new beginnings. I was on my way to meet you for coffee, for what felt like the 1000th time, clutching my notebook full of letters I would never send. My heart fluttered when I saw you waiting by the door of our favorite cafe, sunlight dancing in your hair. But when our eyes met, I saw not warmth, but surprise. Surprise that I was there. You invited me to sit, and I told you about a gallery opening I was attending. You nodded politely, then launched into a story about your latest research project, your excitement tangible, vivid. I nodded back, smiling, but inside, I felt hollow. Because in that moment, I understood. Your world had room for dreams and passions, and friendships, but no space for my love. I closed my notebook. The letters slipped into my bag, unreadable to anyone but me. I sipped my coffee and felt its warmth, and for the first time in years, I tasted freedom instead of longing. I didn't tell you why my smiles were quieter, why my eyes held a new depth. I didn't tell you that I was saying goodbye to the ghost I had become. I left the cafe with grace. You waved as I walked away, and I didn't look back, because walking away was the only way to find myself again. Love, Isla. Chapter 10. Learning to love me. Dear Walter, since that day, I've been learning to love someone I forgot existed. You. The girl who laughed without fear, who dreamed without hesitation, who looked in the mirror and saw a person worthy of love, not just a silent shadow waiting in someone else's light. I started small. I took dance classes, even though my feet stumbled. I traveled alone to cities I'd only read about, finding comfort in strangers' smiles. I wrote poems not about you, but about me, about the seasons, about sunsets that no longer felt lonely. It wasn't easy. Some mornings I woke up with your name on my lips and the ache felt unbearable. But I promised myself I wouldn't let it define me anymore. I realized love isn't just about who you give your heart to, it's about how you treat yourself when no one else is looking. And in that, I found strength. I'm still healing. Maybe I always will be. But for the first time, I'm choosing me. Not because I stopped loving you, but because I deserve to love myself back. Love, Isla. Chapter 11. Letting Go. Dear Walter, letting go is not forgetting. It's not erasing the years or the feelings. It's simply learning to carry the memories without being crushed by them. I still think of you sometimes. Not with the same ache, but with a quiet kindness. I'm grateful for the lessons your silence taught me, the strength I found in my own heart, the courage to face a future without you. I don't hate you. I don't resent you. I just don't need you anymore. I've realized that loving someone who never loved you back is like holding on to a book you've read too many times. The story is beautiful, but it no longer feeds your soul. So I'm closing this chapter, Walter, and setting down the pen. Not because I stopped loving you, but because I'm finally choosing to love myself instead. And that is the beginning of everything. Love, Isla. Chapter 12. Opening new doors. Dear Walter, it's strange how much space opens up when you stop waiting for someone who will never arrive. The world suddenly feels bigger, filled with colors and sounds I hadn't noticed before. I started saying yes to invitations, to new friendships, to chances I would have once declined just to stay close to you even from afar. I'm learning that life doesn't have to revolve around one person's shadow. It can be a dance of many lights and bright, some soft, but all part of something beautiful. I met someone recently. His name is James. He's not you. And that's exactly why I like him. He sees me in ways I forgot I deserved, to laugh freely, to dream wildly, to be imperfect and still be loved. I'm not rushing anything, just walking forward with open eyes and an open heart. Because for the first time in a long time, I'm ready. Ready to write a new story. Love, Isla. Chapter 13. The letter I never sent. Dear Walter, this is the last letter I'll write to you. Not because I stopped loving you, but because I'm finally ready to let you go. For 8 years, you were my quiet obsession, my secret hope, my silent heartbreak. You were the chapter I couldn't close, the song I couldn't stop playing in my mind. But life is not a story meant to be trapped in one page. I've learned that love isn't about possession or longing. It's about acceptance and growth. It's about knowing when to hold on and when to say goodbye. Thank you for the years, for the lessons, for the moments both bitter and sweet. You helped me find my voice, even if I never spoke it to you. Now, I'm stepping into the light, ready to love myself fully and to welcome whatever comes next. I hope you find your happiness, Walter. Truly I do. And I hope one day you'll understand that sometimes the greatest love story isn't the one between two people, but the one we write within ourselves. With love, Isla.